Smakende over
Very
wow. Officially that's very fresh.
yeah.
Which actually combined, interestingly enough, with but actually the purpose of the Pavilion, today also, and the Yom is the Yom HaGeula, the Mitzvah Rebbe, released from prison. He was in prison, and Kiselv, after a long process, is the day that is called the Yom HaGeula of the Mitzvah Rebbe. The Yom HaGeula, we will say later the story of the Geula, what exactly it entails. And this is the purpose of the training, to celebrate the Yom HaGeula, which is the youth kitchen. And so we're going to sing the video of it. It's called the Catalia of the Mitzvah Rebbe. Catalia of the Mitzvah Rebbe. You know the video? Huh?
You know.
yeah. And then Nachun. What? Eat something. I'm not eating it. Fabais. Huh? What's a fabais in something? You have to take with mezainis or something? Nothing there? Chaim, the Yom Agula from the Mitler Rebbe, also the Yom Alula, the Yom Agula. We said before, just a little bit for people who are not so familiar with the minig by Yom Agula, used to be the minig by Kiselv also, but they used to repeat the story of the Gula, and specifically by the Mitler Rebbe. The story is not so well known, it's not so clear. And what was exactly the whole story? And actually, it says, why was the celebration from the Mitler Rebbe's Yom Hagula less celebrated than by Yutas Kiselv? There's such an expression. Huh? Yeah.
So it says the story really what happened. The story what exactly happened is that when they announced it as Yom Geula, when the Geula occurred by Yud Kiselv. In other words, the Geula was happened the year before, and the next year when they want to establish, it said Bechanika, it says Kavim Shana Haba Kavim Yom Tov. So it says like in the Svarim Akdoshim, it says Shana Haba Kavim Yom Tov, that the Yom Tov was established the next year. In other words, the first year when things happened. So it says famously, I think from the Kedushas Levi, it says that when you want to establish a Yom Tov, so how do you establish Yom Tov? You see that the oil from the Yom Tov is coming down, so then you will establish the Yom Tov. The Yom Tov is established, and the oil Chadash that is coming down that year. So in other words, the Yom Tov is established the year afterwards. That's when you celebrate. First year, this is the Simcha itself. But if you want to see if it has as you say, permanence, it has like a continuity, it has perpetuity, so then you have to actually see how it's happening the year afterwards. So in this case, actually what happened was that the next year, when they were supposed to celebrate Yud Kiselv, the day before the Mittler Rebbe passed away, was the Stalus. So they obviously couldn't anymore celebrate, because it was like the Shiva, so to speak. The day after, there was a day, basically Tes Kiselv was a day before the smaller Yom Tov than Yud Kiselv. That's the reason why it's not so strongly celebrated. Yud Kiselv. Huh?
The Mal Rosh Hashanah Chassidus, we don't have now.
Whatever. So what exactly what happened was that the interesting thing how it happened was some cousin, basically a family member of the Mittler Rebbe. His name was Simcha Kissen was his name, and he, for some reason, I don't know why, became like a mortal enemy for Chassidus. He lived, I think, in Vitebsky, lived in the city, like Vitebsky is not far from Lubavitch, and he decided to fight with Chassidus. So he basically, even though it looked like that before they had the relationships, good relationships, I don't know exactly what transformed or what exactly happened, that he decided that he's going to become not less and not more. He's going to become official. He's going to go to the government and be a Malshin and Chassidus. And why he changed his mind is not so clear. And basically, what happened is, how did he? What's the point that he was focusing at? So he writes over there that description that Chassidus came. And he calls himself, we are the authentic Jews, that's what he writes, the real Jews, European Jews, and then there's the Chassidim, and they do strange things, and one of the things is they daven, in Russian they called it like Svardik, the Svardik Nusach, the Svardik rite, they call it in the documents, because we found the documents recently, about 25 years ago, they found the documents from the Russian government, actually, all these documents, which were not known actually before. We knew very little of this whole story, but now we found, like about 30 years ago, they found the documents, because after the Soviet Union collapsed, they found a lot of documents of all these archives, and over there, basically, we find what the written, what's his name, the litigation, so to speak, from this person, and one of the things they writes over there is that they daven differently, and they daven the Asian rite, meaning to say they call the Sfardim in Russia Asia, coming from Middle East. So they're called Asians. So they daven in the Asian Nusach. And we daven the European Nusach. They present it like Europe versus Asia, to present it like kind of that's foreign forces, we talk about alien koiches, very dangerous. That's probably the purpose of inserting, they call them Asian Nusach, like coming from Asia. Which of course then Russia had fights with Turkey, Ottoman Empire basically was the Asian Empire, was the Asian. Anyway, so this was like the description, and the description was how, and actually, as we can see later, it's like related to the Mittler Rebbe a little bit. What happened that they also established their own minyanim, their own shuls, and describes like two cities in Shklov. Shklov was, of course, a famous center of Lithuania and of Misnagdim Jews. And he describes that in the big shul, they also established over there a minyan in the big shul. And he describes everything very nefariously, how this thing occurred. And then he says also, and also in Vitebsk, and that was like the whole thing. Now, of course, what's the case? So, okay, we know that already from the Alter Rebbe, they had already these accusations. But what's the case now? How did he establish the case now? So the specific case that he had, that because somehow, years ago, there was a big chassid, the chassid was named Pinchas Roises. He was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He comes from Sklov. He was one of the famous chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. And he somehow had a relationship once, I don't know why, because he sent him after the Alter Rebbe passed away. The Mittler Rebbe moved to Lubavitch, and he didn't have any money, nothing. Everything was destroyed, correct? Because he escaped. He ran away famously from Liadi. The Alter Rebbe ran away. When the Alter Rebbe passed away, he ran away from Liadi because of the Napoleon War, and everything burned down. And Alter Rebbe passed away in the middle of nowhere in the little town over there. The Hodich, which is like a little town in Ukraine, which no Jews live there, which is close to the city of Kremenchuk. It's in Ukraine, and didn't have nothing. So after the Alter Rebbe passed away, the Mittler Rebbe made an appeal to reestablish Chabad, basically, and then he moved to Lubavitch and had to get money. So he made an appeal for money. And the Chassidim, of course, contributed as much as they can. And from that, they built up the shul in Lubavitch and so on and so forth. Now, what happened is that there's a law that was established when Russia took over the Poland, as you know, famously, if you know the history a little bit, that until the specific date is 1773. White Russia, everything belonged to Poland, and then there was like slowly Russia started carving up all the Ukraine and Poland and so on and so forth, until they basically occupied everything. And now Russia had a law then that you're not allowed to take money. You're not allowed to take money. The Rabbanim are not allowed to take money from the force the Kehillah to give them money. It was like a law, like established a community law, and basically what the accusation was in the whole accusation is that the Mittler Rebbe forced to be supported by the Hasidim. So it was like a forced means of how to take money from Hasidim. Was against the law. That was the essence of the case, so to speak, that this Simcha Kiselv was trying to establish again. So what they did, they sent out an investigation to Lubavitch, and they checked exactly how much everything in Lubavitch cost. They describe over there the shul, how big it is, and how much money it cost. They investigate how they bought it, and then they investigated like everything. Darna Koida, how much the 3 Sefer Torahs, and how much the Sefer Torahs cost. It was exactly 500 rubles the Sefer Torahs cost. And then they established each Sefer Torah cost 1,000 rubles, and it was written by whom. It's like a detailed description of the case, and then they checked the money that he gathered collected after the stalkers of the Alter Rebbe, and then they distorted the numbers. It was 35,000 rubles, and they claimed there's much more, and that's the case. That was the case against and there was a long investigation. It took them a few years out to investigate this case, and they really made a serious investigation. So this was the case, and actually immediately they arrested the Mittler Rebbe, and also arrested a colleague of the Mittler Rebbe. I don't know if you are familiar with. There was a Talmud of the Alter Rebbe, it's called Sturscheller, Rabbi Arnav Sturscheller, and he was also a Rebbe of Chabad, and they also arrested him. They arrested both of them. And then after they released them, there was still a long investigation to see the case, like the arrest, and that's and then Yud Kiselv was vindicated. The case basically was vindicated. The whole thing was just a libel. It was not serious. This is the story of Yud Kiselv. And as you said, the celebration happened already after the stalkers of the Mittler Rebbe, the year that they celebrated. This is basically the Yom HaGeula that we're talking about now. And really, in the same way as the Alter Rebbe's arrest was of course, an attack. It wasn't like a personal attack. It was an attack against Hasidus. Correct? What these Misnagdim tried to accomplish was to make Hasidus, that's what they did also with Alter Rebbe, to make it like illegal. To make Hasidus, practicing Hasidus illegal. This was the attempt over here. Because in the Russia, you have to understand the Russian mindset of the Russian Tsar. They didn't view, they viewed any kind of new thing over here with suspicion. Every new development religion, so they reluctantly allowed to practice Judaism. You have to understand that the Tsarist Russia was a very Christian country, and so on and so forth. And even Judaism, reluctantly, they're allowed to practice Yiddishkeit. And of course, what they did, though, the Snagdim Kasti were trying to always emphasize that this is an illegitimate like cult and something. That's the reason why they called Hasidus in the original a kat, correct? They called it, the purpose of this term kat was for the Russian government, because to make it into a cult, to make it into something that is illegitimate. That's the purpose. It wasn't like an eternal reasons. It was like for the when they wrote these things, they emphasized that it's like just a little offspring that is like illegitimate. And the same thing is also what they still try to do with the Mittler Rebbe. They try to also still fight that Chassidus, at least in that area. They continued fighting it all over, and then the Meskilim started fighting against Chassidus about that thing, to make Chassidus illegitimate. That was the purpose of the whole. And of course, when the Mittler Rebbe was, the fact that he was acquitted, is not only an issue of specifically against personal acquittal. Yeah, something the accusation would be a personal issue. So then, it's also a big thing that a tzaddik is being acquitted from an accusation and being imprisoned, so on and so forth. But of course, it's not that. It's like deeper than that. Of course, it's an accusation against practicing Chassidus. It was like an attack against Chassidus per se. It wasn't an attack, something's personal. It wasn't a personal attack. It was an attack against the Chassidish movement. And they tried to find ways how to make it illegitimate. And that was the purpose of this Malshin. It's clear. The Malshin clearly said. There's even a story that says that Tzemach Tzedek, who was the son-in-law of the Mittler Rebbe, at the time of the arrest, he met this Simcha. His name was Simcha Litman. In the papers it says, really his name is Kiselv, but his father was called Litman something, so they called him Litmovich, I don't know, in the Russian Tsarist papers. So it says a story that Tzemach Tzedek met this guy, and who's, as he said before, he was a cousin of the Mittler Rebbe. He was a family member through his wife, to the Mittler Rebbe's wife. The Mittler Rebbe's wife, Mittler Rebbe's Rebbetzin, was from his family. And there's even a letter, like when the Alter Rebbe was alive, that the Mittler Rebbe writes in very friendly terms, and he says, he calls him Sheir B'Sari, my family. I don't know what changed his mind or what happened into his mind. I don't know what occurred exactly in between. And the story is that when the Mittler Rebbe was imprisoned, and the Tzemach Tzedek met this guy and says, "This is what you do to a family member." So this guy answered like, a person who made the Nigla the Torah should be forgotten. He's not a family member. This is what the guy said. This is what the guy said. You know, that's how vicious he was. Anyway, so this is a severed member, severed relationship. I don't know exactly what occurred. You know, probably in these cases you have to see something else. You know, this is not written in the stories. What exactly happened to this guy that decided maybe he lost money? I don't know. It's usually personal conflict. Somebody offended him. You know, many things, these big things happen from like very little stories, like Oman, correct? Somebody didn't respect him and decided to come out of the Kriya for the whole client. Somebody didn't respect you. You know, many times these things, who knows what happened, you know? But this is what happened actually, and the consequence was very serious. So this is like basically the celebration of Yud Kiselv, that we celebrate basically the Nitzachon of Chassidus, that because of that, Chassidus was able to continue without any interruption. And this is how we say it, Yom Tov, L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim. You know, I don't know. It says by the Alter Rebbe, with the Kiselv's famous thing. It says that it was a kitruk. The whole meiser, the rest was related to a kitruk in the Shamayim. Doesn't say anywhere there's a kitruk by the Mittel Rebbe. I don't remember saying anything like that. But I don't know if there's I don't know what a kitruk even means exactly. You know, some spiritual thing in the heavens. But of course, you know, the fact that that it was this whole story happened, of course, shows that it was like a new phase over here that misnagdim. I don't know. I'm talking. Of course, there was a physical misnagit over here. Correct. The person whose name is Ploini Almoini, as we mentioned before. But what? Yeah. But I'm saying we don't know. Yeah, you know. We mentioned already his name before. But of course, when there's such a kind of event, so the event reflects that there's some criticism on the something that needed a new event to establish that something new happened. Correct? Like the fact that the Alter Rebbe established already the legitimacy of Hasidus, okay, was passed already, and now suddenly something occurred that needed, in other words, a new. There's something new happened, and this new kind of I should say occurrence that occurred basically gendered that there should be this new halshana, the new fight against Hasidus, correct? That was represented by the Mittler Rebbe. Something new happened. Now we know that the Mittler Rebbe was known for expounding Hasidus, even though the Alter Rebbe, it's known that the Alter Rebbe, specifically, it says Yutas Kiselv. Why is one of the reasons why Yutas Kiselv happened? It says because the Alter Rebbe was Megala, revealing Sodus HaTorah, revealing Pnimis HaTorah to the world. And actually, after Yutas Kiselv, instead of holding back, what happened was that Alter Rebbe even spread Chassidus in a much broader level than before. Everything what happened before doesn't come to what happened afterwards. Yutas Kiselv, we discussed it many times, the phenomenon that the Alter Rebbe, after Yutas Kiselv, before that, Chassidus wasn't so well explained. What we call Chassidus means the ideas of Chassidus, the ideas of Einod Mulvadoi, wasn't so well explained. And then after Chassidus, after Yutas Kiselv, the Alter Rebbe started explaining Chassidus on a much more accessible level, on a much more intellectual, intelligent level. And basically that period, that era, that is after Yutas Kiselv, this is what we call basically Chabad. Torah's Chabad is mainly those Torahs that the Alter Rebbe said after the story of Yutas Kiselv. That's what we call Chassidus Chabad. When we have this concept of Chassidus Chabad, correct? So we have the Sefer Tanya, which actually was written before, as we know, but afterwards the Alter Rebbe started explaining ideas of Chassidus in a new manner. That manner makes Chassidus accessible, makes Chassidus understandable, and that which is basically a period of about let's say 12 years. 12 depends exactly the second. There's twice the Yutas Kiselv. In other words, there was twice the Alter Rebbe was in prison. So there's a period of 12 years approximately. And those Mamorim of those years, you can see the difference, the difference between those Mamorim and the Mamorim before. And the Mamorim afterwards, those are Mamorim that we call Chabad. What does it mean, Chabad? Chabad means that these ideas of alakus, of godliness. Now, godliness is inherently something that is beyond the person's understanding, per se. And also, what we call Teres HaPnimis, Teres HaKabbalah, it's also beyond understanding, correct? And what the Alter Rebbe took upon himself afterwards is making an effort, a major effort, to take these ideas, and these ideas to make them understandable, explainable, and therefore accessible to a human mind. And that was like a revolutionary act. It was very revolutionary in the whole history of Pnimis HaTorah. This is what the Alter Rebbe did. That when he established Torah's Chabad, again, it started already in some ways before, but not to the full-fledged development which happened afterwards. So that's basically happened Yutas Kiselv. When somebody tells you this Chabad, Torah's Chabad, and Torah's Chabad is the meaning that is Chacham bin V'das, that a person could understand Chassidus. And what is Chassidus? When we use Chassidus, many people Chassidus means the ideas of alakus, mainly the idea that Einod Milvadoi, that the Eibishter is everywhere, and the Eibishter is ubiquitous, and the Eibishter is pervasive, every place, correct? That's one of the main ideas of Chassidus, which is rooted in a very deep understanding of alakus. So, for example, this idea, so the Alter Rebbe's Mamorim are into the explaining and how to understand it, and how to try to make it into an intelligent mind that a person should be able to understand it. And these Mamorim became Mamorim that a person could learn, that a person could understand, could understand it, could learn it, and could have a kind of intellectual relationship with it. It's not just as a person saying words, or a person saying like in a faith manner that he's okay. This is what it is. The Eibishter is everywhere, but you rather could understand it also. And of course, that fact that the Alter Rebbe started with the Torah's Chabad, which is already again came to the full-fledged development afterwards, it caused conflict between the Alter Rebbe's friends from the Talmidim of the Maggid and so on and so forth. And that's what we call Teres Chabad. Now, in this itself, what the Mittler Rebbe accomplished that he took this Teres Chabad and he brought them to a new level of understanding, correct? The purpose of the Mittler Rebbe was to explain these ideas, and he added more profundity, more depth, and also at the same time more ways of explaining them. That was the Mittler Rebbe's thing that he did, and actually he didn't do it only when the Alter Rebbe passed away. He did it also when the Alter Rebbe was alive. When the Alter Rebbe was alive, it's known that the Mittler Rebbe said, like, as he said, more this what we call the Soides HaTorah, Rosen der Reise. He said it in a more deeper level even than the Alter Rebbe. And usually, even when the Alter Rebbe was alive, the way how the Mittler Rebbe used to write down the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe was more explanatory. It was more explained than the Alter Rebbe himself said it. You could see the difference between the way how he wrote it and other people wrote it. It's quite obviously in the Mamorim. Now it says Ad Kedei Kach, that it says a story. There's a story like when the Alter Rebbe, it was a wedding. The Mittler Rebbe made a wedding of one of his children, and the wedding was in the city. It's called Zlobin, a city in White Russia, and that wedding was with the family of the Rebbe Yitzchak Baditchever. Rebbe Yitzchak Baditchever was a mechutin with the Alter Rebbe. The way I was the mechutin with the Alter Rebbe, Rebbe Yitzchak Baditchever's son had his son, and the Einik of Rebbe Yitzchak Baditchever, he married the Mittler Rebbe's family, the daughter or whatever. And twice they made the shidduch between each other. And this wedding was in a city called Zlobin. Zlobin was like the Mittler, if you know, the Baditchever Rav lived in Ukraine. Like deep Ukraine. Baditchever was like, and Alter Rebbe lived in White Russia. It's very, very far actually. Today things are easier, a little closer a little bit, but when we didn't have trains or cars, you can imagine how far it was. So they made a wedding like actually very close. Lubin is very close to the border between White Russia and Ukraine. They tried to make like a wedding in between. And there's a lot of stories about that wedding. And of course with that wedding, the Mittler Rebbe used to, the Alter Rebbe was still alive, he used to also say Torah, he used to say Chassidus as they call it. And he said his own explanations. And there's a story of the Baditchever Rav asked the Alter Rebbe, he says, such Chassidus does he say, so deep, so sublime, so holy, like say the Rosen der Reise. So it's like a very mysterious thing. It says over there that the Alter Rebbe told him that really he wanted to give a name for the Mittler Rebbe when he was born. It says that he wanted to give a name, Rav Amnuna. Rav Amnuna is basically a Zohar. There's one of the figures in Zohar, it's called Rav Amnuna. He was like a very mysterious kind of figure in Zohar. He wanted to give him that name because really the soul of the Mittler Rebbe comes from that level that is from the side of Rosen der Reise. And over there, this way how the story is, the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe says that, however, what's his name, the Mezritcher Maggid came and dreamed to me, asked me to give a name after him. That's what's one version of the story. Another version of the story that when the Mittler Rebbe was when the Maggid was B'chayev, told him to give a name after him. The whole story, exactly what happened, the last Shabbos of the Maggid's life, and there's a whole dramatic story that occurred with here. And then he told him that when you have a son, you give a name after me. And actually, the Mittler Rebbe was born a year after the Maggid's Estalkus. He was born. The Maggid passed away, Yutas Kiselv, Tov Kuflamet Gimel, and he was born Tov Kuflamet Dalet, Tes Kiselv. He was born the Mittler Rebbe's yahrzeit, the Alilda in the Yom Haledet, the same day, and he actually was born on Tes Kiselv. So he gave him the name Rav Ber. He gave him the name Rav Ber. It doesn't need a lot of explanation. Of course, this is the year of his Rebbe's Estalkus, so obviously he would give a name Rav Ber. But it says over there that it's like came from the Maggid that he should give it. The Alter Rebbe had like before he had daughters only. Didn't the oldest children of the Alter Rebbe were daughters. The first son was born only. The Mittler Rebbe was like the third and fourth child. The first two kids I think were famous Freida and Tzemach Tzedek's mother, who were Leah. They were older than Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was only the third son. Only afterwards he had another two sons. So he obviously he was born in the year of the Stalkus of the Mittler Rebbe. And you see, and basically the idea was that the Mittler Rebbe had like some connection with the Maggid, for the Mezritcher Maggid. And this connection is expressed by the fact that he gave the name, basically he says he gave the name like the Maggid. Now the point was, basically, what the Mittler Rebbe is, what the Mittler Rebbe was Kol Avidas of Ovid Boy. It says that when a person's Stalkus, a person's Yom Stalkus, that's when he encapsulates the day of the Yom Alula, also the whole avodah that he did. Which of course over here we have an interesting combination between the Yom Agula and the Yom Alula. Yom Alula was Tess, and the Yom Agula is like immediately the day afterwards. Now, what was the kind of whole of das Ovid Boy for the Mittler Rebbe, if you could say so? I mean, it says, of course, in the Sichos from the Rebbes, they speak about this whole thing, about the avodah of the Mittler Rebbe. Now, one of the interesting things, it says also about the Stalkus of the Mittler Rebbe, is a very interesting description, which you don't find by the older Rebbes in Chabad. The Mittler Rebbe, the last day of his Stalkus, there's a whole thing, a few descriptions of it remained, like from Chassidim that wrote down even Shaitek, very close to Mittler Rebbe's Stalkus. There's a few versions of it. And the versions of it that describes of it the other night, the Mittler Rebbe was in his bed and became sick suddenly, and he said he asked him to put on white clothing in him, and then it says a very, very interesting thing that he said, that he wants to be mamled stoiv on Jews and Yidden, and then he said maybe there's no shalom and peace between Yidden, but one thing it is that the mitzvahs maisi is for sure the Yidden do properly. That's what interesting thing what he said. And then he said, like, he asked that the Gedolah Chassidim of the people understand Chassidus should come close to him, and they start saying Chassidus. He said 3 Mamorim that night, and he was like, and he said when he's napping, they should wake him up, and the whole thing, and then when he said this whole night, he was saying Chassidus, and then it was close in the morning, he was saying anything at that moment, he was saying the Maimer, and he said, Ki imchom b'kol chaim b'orchen nir'oyer. That's the words that he said. Ki imchom b'kol chaim, and then is installed from those words, Ki imchom b'kol chaim nir'oyer. And some tzedek said, on this Talkus, that since Rashbi, we find in the Zohar, the Rashbi has a whole description in what says the Talkus of the Rashbi. So it's famous. The Rashbi's Stalkus also was similar Stalkus, and some tzaddik said that the Stalkus, since Rashbi, we didn't find such a Stalkus, such a kind of comparison with Rashbi. Now, so we see an interesting thing over here that we compare like the Mittler Rebbe to Rashbi. What's the comparison between Rashbi? So there's actually a Sikha from the Rebbe. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe doesn't speak about this specific thing, but the Rebbe says in the Sikha, because it says, the Alter Rebbe says, it's actually connected with this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha says, Eida Galazeh. Eida Galazeh, so there's a mimer of the Alter Rebbe, it says, Eida Galazeh, from there we learn not Lag Boimer. The Lag Boimer, Lamed Gimel goes on Lag Boimer. So this is what the Alter Rebbe says, but it doesn't explain exactly how the remes is, what's the connection with the Lag Boimer and Eida Galazeh, but this is what he says. So the Sikh with the Rebbe says, what is a gal? A gal is a kind of mound of stones that are together, and that's what a gal is, correct? Now a gal, of course, is defined by a gal, which is not like a mountain or a rock. You know, usually we find, by Yaakovin you find matzevas constantly. Even in this parsha it speaks about a matzeva, correct? Matzeva is a rock. A rock is a hard thing, correct? Matzeva is something. Gal is, as you said, Eida Gal Hazeh. That what? That we shouldn't cross over, correct? That's what it says. But for doing anything animosities, you shouldn't go back. But if you do parakamati, you could go back. So it's a kind of like very, as you call a soft border. It's not a hard border. You know, you have a hard, you can't cross. But this is like crossable. But it's like a kind of a sign that we should have a peace agreement. But for the positive versus the negative, so on and so forth. That's the gal. That's the meaning of a gal. That's the significance of a gal. Now the gal is therefore representing that there is a distinction, there is a border over here, but nevertheless we could cross. So basically, what happened was, when you're talking about the Rashbi, what's the idea of Rashbi? What did the Rashbi accomplish? Rashbi revealed Primis HaTorah. Primis HaTorah. Now, basically, until Rashbi, Primis HaTorah was completely not accessible. No one had, even the Tanoim V'Amarayim, it said, what does it mean? What is the idea of Rashbi? Rashbi revealed the Zohar. What does it mean to reveal the Zohar? He revealed the Zohar means, of course, it says Pnimis HaTorah. What's Pnimis HaTorah? Pnimis HaTorah is basically that there's a whole realm, a mystical realm of existence, which the Torah, our Torah, the Eibshter famously gave the Torah, Nigla the Torah, the exoteric Torah, correct? The external Torah speaks about very physical things, Hamachla Parah B'Chamar, and so on and so forth, correct? Now then there's a dimension which is called, we call it the Soid. Soid is a Torah. It's the secret of part of Torah. What is the secret part of Torah? The secret part of Torah is basically when you say Hamachla Parah B'Chamar. What is a parah? A parah is a cow. Chamar is a donkey, correct? And of course we're talking about physically concrete, tangible donkeys, correct? Tangible things. And then there is such a thing that the root of a chamar and a parah exists also in the upper dimensions, in the aruchnisdik, a spiritual parah, spiritual donkey, correct? Now the spiritual correct donkey and that thing is exists. It's a reality. It's a spiritual reality. There exists many dimensions, like even myriad dimensions of a parah and a chamar, which exist in many worlds and in many planes and in many realms and so on and so forth. And this is now before Rashbi, if somebody had to see these dimensions, you had to be a shtekel prophet. You had to see what's happening. You have to be able to be a person that lives on that world. If he's a spiritual person and the physical world doesn't obscure anything spiritual, which is like a rare thing, which is a navi or similar to a navi. So then you are able to see, let's say, chamar. How is chamar in the spiritual dimension? Correct? But if you're not, you have no way how to know anything about that. That's really called a soid. That's the meaning of a secret. That's a real secret. Secret is not a secret because somebody didn't tell you the secret. It's a secret really because inherently it's something that is, It's not. It's there. It's not here. How do we know what's happening in a world that we don't live in? So what Rashbi did, revealed the Pnimius in the sense that he revealed his Talmidim, and he was Megala as Toiris Apnimius. He was Megala the spiritual dimensions of things, and he articulated them and he explained them, and that's what the Zohar is. The Zohar is the sefer that reveals how things are existing on a. Most of the Zohar, like to give you an example, correct? The one of the Zohar everyone says Kegavna. What does the word Kegavna mean? Kegavna means the same way. In the same way, as things are here, likewise the things are in the upper dimension. That's basically the meaning of Kegavna. Like Shabbat, this is the Shabbos that we practice, and then the Zohar tells us Kegavna, what's the Shabbos in the higher worlds. So here you have a Zohar that the Zohar revealed us what Shabbos is in the upper dimensions. That's the Zohar. And like every parsha, you see the Zohar. Zohar tells us like there's in this olam, and then there's how Pnimis is in the upper worlds. That's the idea of Pnimis HaTorah. That's what Rashbi really revealed. That's the revelation of Rashbi. And Rashbi, when he's Megala Pnimis HaTorah, he basically made the Pneumius into the Torah. Yeah, everyone could take a Zohar, everyone could learn the Zohar. Of course, the Zohar was itself not revealed immediately. There was a whole process of the Zohar's revelation itself. For years and years, hundreds of years, the Zohar was a obscure, hidden text that existed somewhere, correct? And then it somehow revealed it, and even afterwards it wasn't published. And when they published it, there was a big controversy publishing the Zohar. There's a famous tshuva from Rabbi Yitzchak Latish. You could look at an ekdama from the Zohar. It was a huge controversy. People were against publishing the Zohar. Every phase of revelation of Pnimis HaTorah had like obstacles. People were against that, correct? Because for various reasons. There's also a reason inherently that the Pnimis HaTorah has to be Pnimius, as it can be given for everyone. There's many reasons for that. But the Rashbi was the Megala Pnimis HaTorah. He made the Pnimis HaTorah into a sefer. Suddenly there's a sefer. Till then, there was no such sefer. When we say Tanoim and Meroim knew Pnimis HaTorah, it doesn't mean they knew Pnimis HaTorah because there was a sefer. The Tanoim and Meroim themselves were people that had access to the ruch, to spiritual worlds, and they were able to see things in the spiritual dimension. That's what it means that they were Pnimis. They were shaykh to Pnimius. And Rashbi made it into a sefer. That's what Rashbi accomplished. That's the kuda that we call Rashbi. Therefore, the Rashbi is like the founder. We say the founder of Pnimius, the Pnimis HaTorah, correct? And so Mamela. So therefore, it says that Lag Ba'omer, going back to the idea of Lag Ba'omer, that is a gal. That Rashbi was the first that softened the barrier between the Pnimius and the Nigla, between the exterior and the interior, between the spiritual and the exoteric Torah. The exoteric. So that's what Rashbi did, and he poured through some holes in it. So here you were able to have a peak. You were able to have some accessibility. So that's what Rashbi did. That's a pshat. That's the reason why in Eida Galazeh is the Lag Ba'omer. That's the reason why it's the concept of Gilui from Pnimis HaTorah, and it's in that pasuk. So when we're coming to when we're talking about over here, we're coming to Chassidus, which Chassidus in Pnimis HaTorah itself revealed a new dimension. Chassidus came and revealed something completely in Pnimis HaTorah itself, a new dimension. And that dimension itself, of course, the same way there was obstacles and there was like all kinds of struggles about the Pnimius from Kabbalah, the Pnimius from what you call Pnimis HaTorah. So when we came to the world of Chassidus, when Chassidus came, as we know, there was a lot of vicious polemics against Chassidus. As we say, the Alter Rebbe was arrested, and beforehand it was years and years and years of tremendous struggle against the whole movement of Chassidus that had many obstacles on its way, and that's because Chassidus came and revealed something completely new in the dimension of Pnimis HaTorah itself. And then, basically, in simple words, what Chassidus came to teach us, and that's what that every Yid has to know. Every Chassid for sure has to know, and we came already spread that even non-Chassidim already accepted this, correct? Basically, the idea of Einoi Mulvadoi, in a very simple sense, that Elikus is not only, that's why in a mystical dimension. Generally we understand that, as we said, the Giluf and Pnimius meant that here there's this our world, and then there's the upper world, and over there, of course, we said, there's a Chamar there. Correct? That's what Pnimis HaTorah came to tell us, which is a very important revelation, a very important understanding. But Chassidus came to tell us that the Machlapar, the Chamar that we're talking about, is not like there's an upper Chamar. Now the Chamar that we hear, there's this Chamar that we see. That Chamar is really Elikus. The Koich Eliki is in that Chamar. That's basically what Chassidus came to teach us. And that's a revolution of, because every step of the way, when there's a Gilui of Elikus, as we say, it says just today that we learned a little bit Torah from the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe explains, what was Yaakov? Yaakov Avinu. What is Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov Avinu, we see that, and every step of the way, Yaakov's life, he had non-stop obstacles. from Esav to Lavan, and then he had Mitzrayim. Yaakov was a person, relative even to Avraham and to Yitzchak. We see Yaakov had non-stop obstacles on every step of his way, of his life, and the point that he afterwards had to say that his life was terrible. When he said he came to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, like, how old are you? And he told him that his life was. So what's the pshat? Yaakov had these obstacles at every step of the way. What's the reason? So Chassidus, it says the reason is, what was Yaakov really? What was the task of Yaakov, even relative to Yitzchak and relative to Avraham? Yaakov is, as you said, his name is Yaakov, is Yud Ekev. Ekev is called a Kavayim. Kavayim means the soul. It's the lowest level of a person, correct? The Ekev. And Yud is the highest level. And Yaakov, of course, wanted to remain Bikashak of Yaakov Shalva, as it says in the later parsha, but of course you can imagine also, Yaakov was there, he was a Ben Torah, sitting and learning, and Yoshev Ha'olim, and suddenly life jumped on him. His brother Esav, and then he was sent to get married, and they told him, you have to go to Haran, down to Lavan. And of the way how he was down to Lavan, Pshuta Shel Mikra, he had tremendous hard life for just getting Rachel and Leah. He had to work 7 years, 14 years, so mind-boggling. If you think about Yaakov's whole odyssey, what he had to go through in order to just get basic things of life that everyone gets simply, and of course a little money that he wanted to have, Basi also had those tremendous struggles. You can't even fathom what Yaakov's really life was. It says in the heat and in the sun, in the cold, and you had to like watch all these animals, and that was the void of Yaakov. So the question is, what exactly? Yaakov is b'chir sheba'avis. Like, how come Yaakov had this type of life that is like, I wouldn't wish it on my biggest enemy to have. Like, just imagine somebody, usually when somebody gets married, he gets the Mimhalta Mois, this way gives him for free, correct? He supports him today. Gets a house and a car and everything, correct? Now,
when did that start?
Now, what?
I would still be married if that happened. When did that start?
Yeah, you came late to the game. Anyway, find out over here in Lakewood, I'll tell you. Anyway, so and Yaakov is the opposite. He had to work for each wife. He didn't say me a madden. No, he had to work. It's exactly the opposite as we perceive today life. Now, what's the pshat? The only way how it says famously by tzaddikim. We look at these parshas, actually this parsha Yetzer specifically, just on the surface, which is the external understanding of the parsha. It's not, we can't grasp exactly what is the story telling us. What is the meaning of the parsha? The whole story sounds very, very strange. It's strange on the face of what is the story telling us? What is the meaning of the story? Doesn't say anything specifically. We have to read between the lines. So there's a famous saying, the Chassidish saying says that the parshas of these parshas are wearing are dressed up with a thick pelts, meaning with a fur coat. Meaning they're so covered, and the pneumius is hidden in there. And we have to understand that the main thing is the pneumius, not the chitzonius. Because with understanding just the simple story as it is, the story. What religious message do we have from this whole story? That this whole story is like from working for Lavan, and then the whole story working for Lavan and having a few kids, and then working again for Lavan, and the kudim, berudim, the kudim. The whole thing doesn't, and the nigla, we can't understand. If somebody, if a posh to eat, says, okay, steht in the Heilige Torah, correct? But if you're not such a posh to eat, so what do you have to make from this parsha? This parsha is like boggles the mind on the face of it, on the surface of it. And this is where we have to learn a little bit Pnimis HaTorah. That's the importance of learning. That's the reason why he has to learn Pnimis HaTorah. Pnimis HaTorah is really opening up a little bit, as we said before, Eda Galazeh. It's opening up taking off the pelts a little bit and giving us a little peek on the internal, on the Pnimius, on exactly the meaning of the story and what exactly the story tells us. And of course, there's many approaches in Pnimius, but that's the accomplishment of Pnimius. That's what Pnimius did. Pnimius indicate was teaching. It's supposed to teach us that what's behind the story behind the story. So in this case, going back to the question that we asked, what exactly Yaakov had to suffer so much? Why Yaakov had to suffer so much? So in the previous reason why Yaakov had to suffer, because really what Yaakov did was that really, as you said before, the divine, as you said before, there's upper worlds. What is the upper worlds? What does upper mean? Upper worlds means there is we're Shemaim Lashem. Over there with the revelation of God is the upper world. That's upper means where God is revealed. That's this worlds, these dimensions, which those dimensions are not hiding the Eibishter. They're transparent. That's called the upper world. That's called the Olam Elyon. It's not up there. It's not in some fifth floor. That's not what upper means. Upper means a dimension which godliness is revealed. That's what the upper world is. The lower world is, meaning the world where we occupy, we live in, it's a world of darkness, bleakness. We don't see any godliness in this world. We don't see anything. The world is just a physical world of food and of self ego and of self-expression and of self-centeredness. That's the world that we live in, correct? The world of materialism that everyone has, correct? And here we have the world, the spiritual dimension. And usually they're unbridgeable in some ways. The divine world is the opposite of the physical world. The physical world is egocentric, and the divine world is like it abhors any egocentrism. It's like against any self-centeredness. That's what the Lakus is, and Lakus can only be in a place where there's no physical selfishness. That's the spiritual world. Now, really, there's a gap that he can't reconcile these two worlds. But the Eibishter doesn't want to reconcile. The Eibishter wants to reveal himself in this world. Right? That's the goal. That's really the ultimate goal. So Pnimius tells us, the real Pnimius tells us that what was Yaakov doing? What was Yaakov's role in the world? All the others had a specific role. I'm not going to go into what Avram, Yitzchak. If you learn Pnimius HaTorah, you're going to know that. But I'm just here, we're just trying. So Yaakov Avinu, what was his specific role? His specific role was to take not only to reveal that there's a Lakus, but furthermore to bring down the Madregen Lakus into this world. That was Yaakov's goal. That's what the meaning of the Yud in Kabbalah terms. Yud is Chochmah. Chochmah is like the highest revelation of the Eibishter. Eikev is the lowest. Yaakov was supposed to reconcile things that is impossible almost to reconcile. In other words, naturally it's not possible. How do you connect this world to Elokus? But this was Yaakov's purpose and goal in life. And therefore, if this is your goal in life, you should know that it's tremendous struggle. Then the world is going to fight back. It's not going to allow you to accomplish that thing. If you want to fight with the world, the world has a way to fight back against you. That's how it always happens. When you want to bring the koiches, what's his name? The koiches sitrachra, as we call it, the koiches klipa, they don't give up their territory without a fight. They never give up without a fight. And as it says, therefore, in a personal level, it's also like this. If a Yid wants to do something spiritual, the koiches are going to fight back with every power that they have. They're not going to go and surrender without a fight. That's a given. And of course, when Yaakov, of course, that he wanted to subdue the world for Alakus, so that's the reason why the world fought back with all its might that it can, and that's the reason why Yaakov's life was constantly a struggle. That's what the Pnimius HaTorah tells us. That's what Pnimius HaTorah teaches us. This is really what happened. If you uncover the story, this is the essence of the story. Therefore, Yaakov suffered tremendously because he took upon himself something to do. The Eibishter gave him this role. I don't know exactly how it worked. It seems that it was a combination of both. Correct. So you see. the whole, if you learn a Pnimis HaTorah, you'll understand every aspect of the Torah from the Seal Sulam and all things that happened exactly in that way. And that's basically what Pnimis HaTorah reveals to you. And of course, in Pnimis HaTorah, there's many, many understandings of Pnimis HaTorah. This is one understanding. The Chassidus specifically gives the understanding of Yaakov Avinu. And that understanding gives you a new approach to understand the whole thing, what happened over here, the whole struggle that occurred over here. And B'meila differs also when Chassidus, so going back, that Chassidus tells us, and specifically this, that when you say a machal parah v'chamar, not only that's the avoid of Yaakov, not only that here this is an olam misal yoinim something, but know that in olam misal tachtoinim here, this world, you see this battle, everything is permeated to Lakus, and that revelation. Now, of course, this revelation, when Chassidus came, as you said before, the same way as they fought against Yaakov Avinu, they fought against Chassidus also, because there was a tremendous, of course, the world. The Olam, the Gashmis Olam doesn't want to reveal this revelation. This basically undermines the whole Metzius of the world. There's nothing more undermines. It destroys basically the whole existence of the world. As long even the Pnimis, the Giluv of Pnimis HaTorah before. Okay, so there's still space for both of us. Correct? I'm here, you're there. Correct? But if you claim and you say that the Pnimis is here. This is a lakus. This is godliness. So that thing there's a tremendous kind of boomerang against kind of that type of thing, and that was the Pneumius also. Why against Chassidus it was such a fight. So of course the fight externally was with Pliny Almoini and this person, that person, and it seemed, but the reason why the depth of the fight is rooted in that type of thing. The Sutra Achra doesn't give away its space, doesn't surrender, doesn't give up so quickly, and that was the fight exactly. That's and so the Mela therefore. Okay, we'll say some l'chaim also. L'chaim.
All the details talks about, they made the sheet, the dark and the white and the stripes of the previous. What is that?
You want to know everything now, but regalachas? Yeah, you have to learn to see this. Oh, but that's the Yachma.
Yamma
So when we talk about the thing that we just discussed about Chassidus in general, as we said before, so Chassidus revealed this idea, just like a fundamental, revolutionary idea. It's like basically a major revolution. Now, this idea itself, to understand this idea, so of course you could say this idea, you could say it with words, and you could like claim that you believe this idea. But here, what the Alter Rebbe basically did is the Alter Rebbe not only this idea you saw that Baal Shem Tov was Megala, but he was also explaining this idea. The Alter Rebbe was Mevar, the Yisoid, as we just said before, he explains this Yisoid. But even that, it's like Kitzur Nimritz, very short, with very Kitzur. And later, as I said before, we call that the Alter Rebbe's after Peterburg, after Stalkus of the Mittler Rebbe, of after the Meiser. So then the Alter Rebbe, those years, the Alter Rebbe explained these ideas. So we see this. Of course, we're just speaking an essential idea. The ideas, which is, of course, Soivav Kalavmin, Malak Kalavmin, which was all rooted. Kidio, this is the Lashon HaZohar. The Zohar says that the Eibishter is Bechinas Soivav and the Eibishter is Bechinas Mamala. That the Yisoid HaKalkus is everywhere. And of all these concepts, what we call Soivav and we call Mamala, are very, very deep ideas. And the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe explains these ideas. What do you mean explain? He makes these ideas understandable. And that's like a new phase. Because, as we said before, as long as these things remain like faith, when we talk about faith itself, Amunah, correct? Every Yid has Amunah, every Yid is a Maimen, every Yid. So the Madrega of Amunah itself also makes things still aloof, abstract. Something that is in the realm of Amunah, as everyone knows, something that a person has to believe. So something that a person cannot digest in his mind still remains something that is not real, it's not tangible, it's not concrete in a person's mind. Every person. So of course, every Yid is a Maimon in the Eibishter, correct? And a Maimon in Torah, and a Maimon in Mitzvahs. That's like a given. That's the thing itself, correct? But then these things that remain on the level of Amunah remains abstract. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe's whole task was, the Alter Rebbe saw to that for a reason that he saw, that he tried to make those things understandable apisei also. Meaning to say, that the same way that a person could learn Nigla, and he understands it, that's what Nigla means. Nigla means what you call the external Torah. A person understands the ideas, he's able to comprehend them, he's able to properly relate to them because it makes sense to him, and he feels that they're real to him. That's a part. So the Alter Rebbe's attempt was also to make Chassidus understandable in the same way. And really, if somebody understands a little bit Pnimis, knows a little bit the history of Pnimis HaTorah, is familiar with this, but he knows that this is a major revolution what the Alter Rebbe did. It's an unbelievable accomplishment. And you can see, like Taka, besides Alter Rebbe, any Pnimis is not understandable. The Alter Rebbe was the only one that made the Inyan of Pnimis understandable. And there, we coming to the Mittler Rebbe, because that's like the Yom Magul of the Mittler Rebbe, as you said before. The Mittler Rebbe, saying that the Rebbe said in the Sikh over there, that Eida Galazeh, this week's Parsha, referring to the Mittler Rebbe, the Stalkus happened, happened back in Parsha Vayetzei. So it refers to the Mittler Rebbe. because the Mittler Rebbe, what the Mittler Rebbe did, is even more than the Alter Rebbe before. But the Mittler Rebbe made the Chassidus, one of the things that the Mittler Rebbe did, is that he made Chassidus into a limit. What does it mean to make into a limit? Because even the Alter Rebbe, of course, you can understand. The Alter Rebbe said Chassidus, said Torah is Chassidus, correct? Chassidim came, Chassidim listened, Chassidim wrote it down. But like in every field, in every area, correct? When you have like a person that says great things and he says gewaltige, deep ideas. So many times after the stalkers of that person, the thing could disappear. Could lav dafka, if we find in the history a little bit in Pnim Satorah, like let's say the Rizal, correct? Give an example a little bit, the Rizal. So the Rizal revealed unbelievable new ideas in Kabbalah. And we know that the Rizal are a Talmud of Chaim Vital. And the greatness of Reb Chaim Vital was that if he wouldn't be there, the whole Torah of the Rizal would disappear. Because it was so deep and so profound. It wasn't the Reb Chaim Vital did. He became like he wrote down all the Torahs and he organized them. He made them into a system, into a way of learning. That's what the Reb Chaim Vital did. And similar thing also when we're talking about the Baal Shem Tov, correct? So the Baal Shem Tov, whoever understands the Baal Shem knows a little bit the history of the Baal Shem Tov revealed Torahs of Baal Shem Tov. But the way the Baal Shem Tov revealed Torahs of Baal Shem Tov was in a very abstract way. Meaning to say, he said like Torahs, different Torahs, and you really have to grasp what exactly those Torahs mean. Yeah? For example, I'll give you an example. So one of the Torahs that is, as we said, the foundation of the idea that the Eibishter is everywhere, it says in the Torah, the Baal Shem Tov says, L'olam yeh Hashem d'varach nitzav v'shamayim. Yeah, that's the famous Torah. It's brought down in Shayich d'Vamuna. Meaning to say, so the Baal Shem Tov said that the words of Rikia, the word the Eibishter said that there should be heaven, these words, L'olam, is always, eternally there, v'shamayim. Meaning to say, the Eibishter says these words constantly. Okay? Now let's say a person looks at these Torah, says, oh, very nice taich, very nice shmak, nice, cute. You can repeat it by Shabbos Suda. Okay? And the words, holy words. Correct? Now, most of the people that I know of wouldn't see that there's anything unique in this statement. You could say, as a matter of fact, there's a Medrash says similar things to that. And for all the years, even the Medrash said, nobody even had understanding that exactly what does the statement say? What's unique in the statement, correct? So here, when you learn this statement, this Vart, just like a little statement, a little Vart Torah, you learn this how it's in Shayich D'Vamuna, which is in Tanya, and you learn it over there, you see, the Alter Rebbe starts developing, the whole, basically, Shayich D'Vamuna is developing this Vart. And you understand what the Vart basically says, that the Dvar Hashem, the Eibishter constantly says, Yi Oyer, and the constantly says, and not only Yi Oyer, he says on the whole Bria, every second, so to speak, the world has to be recreated, resuscitated, and revitalized from new. And then the Alter Rebbe explains how come this is so, and he explains because the world on its own cannot exist. And of course, if you continue from that, chapter after chapter, you understand that way the world can exist. So now that the world exists, so really the whole Metzius of the world is really just a lakus. Now this no one is able to understand it on its own, correct? It's not you see the Dvar Torah by itself, you would never in a million years, I think, maybe I underestimate the guys over here, but I apologized before, but never in a million years would a person come to the understanding that this is really what the word says, correct? So of course you have to understand what the idea of the Baal Shem Tov, you have to be a part of the whole thing, you understand? So then when you look at every word, you understand that this is where it's coming from, this is what it's trying to say. But on its own, so let's say that the Baal Shem Tov's Vertlach would just be there, out there. So would this disappear kind of it wouldn't be like a reality for forever and ever, correct? And the person who basically took Chassidus and he made it into reality, so historically, you say, was the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, the Mezritcher Maggid. So the Mezritcher Maggid, the Maggid of Mezrich, who was considered the main Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, Baal Shem Tov had different Talmidim. He had different Talmidim. He had like, famously, he had, you could say 4 main Talmidim. He had like many Talmidim. But 4, what? 60 Talmidim, correct. So, but he had like the 4 main Talmidim that they had to stickle Talmidim were you could say, it was the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, correct? This is the Toldos Yaakov Yosef was Yaakov Yosef of Pilna. He wrote a sefer. It's called Toldos Yaakov Yosef. That's the name of the sefer. But he wrote many others for him. Sefer Spasim, Sefer Spaneach, and so he famously, they call him the world of Chassidus, the scribe of the Baal Shem Tov. He most of the Torahs of the Baal Shem Tov he wrote down in his Svarim. You know, it says over there, it's a few hundred times. Moiri goes on the Torah of the Baal Shem Tovs that he wrote down. If he wouldn't write it down, it wouldn't exist even. And then there is the Pichas Karitzer was from the famous big Talmidim, and then Mechels Lotche, but they were the famous big Talmidim. They had like Talmidim. Other tzaddikim had like didn't have so many Talmidim, so there's many.
Kosovo, no?
Who?
Baruch
Kosovo, we don't have the Talmud of Shem Tov. Anyway, the kids. So what? There's Kalaria, there's from Palo, there's many good. Who?
From Kalska.
From Kalska's Talmud to the Maggid. Anyway, the Maggid of what the Maggid of Mezrich did, of course. Who? The Maggid, the Zritcher Maggid, what the Mezritcher Maggid, of course, did. He had basically he took the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, and he basically had hundreds and hundreds of Talmidim from the greatest personalities in that generation, correct? And he basically made Chassidus into a movement. You know, in the Shem Tov's time, there was Chassidim coming to this. He made it into a huge movement. Then his Talmidim established Chassidus all over, correct? From Rav Noam Alamelech to the Chayzer for Lublin to the what's his name to the Nachun Chernobyl and the Van Kaliner and so on and so forth, and Alter Rebbe, of course, and the Van Vitebsker and Von Kalsker. He made basically. If you and the way I wrote down Chassidus also, the way I explained like the Torah of Baal Shem Tov, he basically in that sense made Chassidus into the reality. Without him, Chassidus would be obviously the Hashgach Al Yoina made this whole thing. I'm just saying if you just like look at it and the face of it, without him, Chassidus Chas v'Shalom be forgotten, as you say. You know, there's a lesson from the I think it's Chas v'Shalom because there's a lesson from the Rashab writes over there that if the Alter Rebbe wouldn't have the period of after he came out and he said Chassidus, which is called after Peterburg, he said Chas v'Shalom, he said Chas v'Shalom on Chassidus, because Chassidus would be forgotten also. He said the same lashon. So if you look at the Maggid of Mezrich, the Maggid of Mezrich did he made Chassidus into a real reality, and that's basically the Chassidus became real as a movement, and of course then it started from him. The last year of the Maggid, the Cherem against Chassidus came out. The last year of the Maggid's life, and that was the Maggid. Now, therefore, I'm just saying also, it seems from the Derech Remes, it seems that the Mittler Rebbe had a similar role to the Mezritcher Maggid within Chabad itself, correct? As we said before, the Maggid told the Alter Rebbe that he should give a name after him. Then the story, he had a dream that he should give after a name. And the Mittler Rebbe was called. He was born in the year of Stalkus of the Maggid, the Mezritcher Maggid. Within Chabad itself, you know, the Chassidus from the Alter Rebbe, with all the things that the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was the Alter Rebbe, correct? And he taught this gewaltige Chassidus, correct? What the Mittler Rebbe did, he made Chassidus Chabad into a kind of a reality. And of course, starting foremost, that he published the Memoriam of the Alter Rebbe, and he was Megid Alter Rebbe. And you see in the letters of the Mittler Rebbe writes in between these letters that people claimed after the sons of the Alter Rebbe that Chassidus is over. There's a sharp agreement from the Mittler Rebbe. There's a whole thing over here that the Mittler Rebbe said that Yesh Oimrim, that there shows that there's no Chassidus anymore. After the Alter Rebbe passed away, there's no Chassidus. There's kind of letters in that sense, correct? And what the Mittler Rebbe, however, did, not only there was like the continuation of Chassidus, but one of the things that the Mittler Rebbe did, more even than what happened to Alter Rebbe, is like a phenomenon that what we call learning Chassidus. Like learning Chassidus is the whole idea that it's not only that a person goes to the Rebbe and he hears a little bit Chassidus, you have to understand today things, especially with Chassidus Chabad, we're so used to learning Chassidus and we learn Svarim, and it's like a common part of our, which is exactly not existing in other places, but in the world of Chabad. But truthfully, these things are revolutions. To take what Pnimis HaTorah in that sense, to take these ideas of Pnimis HaTorah, you have to understand in all areas, because people didn't learn Pnimis HaTorah. It wasn't a common, like Kabbalah, all these things were not accepted. Correct? Now, what happened in the world of Chabad, what the Mittler Rebbe did, what the Mittler Rebbe accomplished was that he took Torahs, the Alter Rebbe's Torah, and actually not only this, he actually published Svarim, which is he published his own Svarim, 10 Svarim, and he writes in all his Akdamas. Why does he publish Svarim? Because people should learn Bechavrusis, and they should learn Bekvutzis, and they should learn Chassidus, correct? That's the whole thing, that's the reason why he published this Svarim. It's a big, every Sefer has very interesting introductions, Akdamas Gedolos. And the purpose of the Akdamas Gedolos. And this thing was an unbelievable revolution, and that's like similar to the revolution of Rashbi in the Indian of Chassidus. I'm not talking, not only that he explained Chassidus per se, which of course he explained it very, more than the Kidua, the Alter Rebbe's Chochman, he was Bina, but he also made Chassidus into kind of a limud. That's what he worked very hard, but Chassidim, and he published the Svarim, and he writes. It's famous that he published Svarim for each type of Chassidim. He published type of Svarim. Correct? You have a tremendous gap in the Svarim even. There's one of the deepest Svarim of the Mittler Rebbe. It's called Imre Bina. It's the most profound sefer. It's very deep, it's very hard. And it says that he wrote it for a certain chassid, it's named Kusha Lepler, whatever. This whole story about him, and then he wrote like Derech Chaim. Derech Chaim is like a Musa sefer type of sefer. So it says that he actually published, he wrote Svarim for the whole, so to speak, spectrum of Chassidim, and he wanted to have each level of Chassidim should have their own sefer. And that, of course, today we look back at it, we were used to, we spoke about it, Chav Cheshvan, the Rebbe Rashab made Chassidus a part of the yeshiva, right? Which is another step, the yeshiva Bachar learned Chassidus, that's another revolution. But before that, there was a whole phenomenon which is absolutely Davar Mechudesh Ma'id. And meaning to say, what does it mean learn Chassidus? What does it mean learn Chassidus? Learn Chassidus is not just Tamal Limud. Learn Chassidus means that the ideas of a Lakus, as we said before, that the Eibishter is an Eilat Mulvadi, that the Nekuda of Gila Lakus in the world, that becomes like a part of the same way as you learn about Hilchas Muktzah, you learn about Hilchas Yichud Hashem, correct? You learn the Inyan of Achdus Hashem. This famous, and it's a written in Imre Bina and Akdama, he writes about it. When he writes in the Akdama of the Imre Bina, but it's a famous saying. You can see it actually. This is the purpose when he writes the Imre Bina. The Mittler Rebbe said that he wants that two Chassidim meet with each other. They should speak about Yichud Elah, Yichud Tetah. And he writes over there that the purpose of Chassidus, that's what he writes back in the Akdama, is Yichud. The Alter Rebbe was Yichud Elah, Yichud Tetah. Yichud Elah, Yichud Tetah means how the Yichud Hashem, Yichud Elokus, Achdus Elokus, is in this world. He says when two people meet in the streets, he wanted this Chassidim. What they talk about was Yichud Elah, Yichud Tetah. And of course, in order to accomplish that, he created this whole thing that's, we say, Sifrei Chassidus. This is what we call Sifrei Chassidus. I mentioned already before, that in not Chabad, the opposite, learning Chassidus was not accepted at all. Today, everyone learns Chassidus, correct? Because they notice that the way, the mahalach of learning Chassidus is a necessity. Okay? They can't anymore say, okay, well, we're getting dressed up in a certain dress code, and it's fine. But in Amolgi Chassidim, because they felt that Chassidus is something personal. It's not something that he learned, correct? That's basically what a big machlokes is between Chabad and not Chabad. In let's say places like Karlin, you weren't supposed to learn the sefer they have Beis Aaron. If Chassid was found learning it, they kicked it. They laughed from him. It was like considered. I saw actually interesting thing even that I saw in a Kalina source that it says that the Kalina, which one? I think it was like what they call in Kalin the Unika of Kalin. Frankfurter. He came Rebbe when he was very young. I think it's him. It says according to the calculation, it should be him. And it says over there he sent one of his chassidim. They asked him to go to which yeshiva, lit yeshiva. So he sent them. They didn't have yeshivas in Kalin. He sent them to Lubavitch to go to learn by the Rishab's yeshiva. But he told them, but he shouldn't learn Pnimis too much. He told them he shouldn't learn Chassidus too much. He told them, because even though he sent them to the yeshiva because he wanted to have a Chassidus yeshiva, because by knew in Chabad, that's what they learn in yeshiva is that you learn Pnimis HaTorah, which of course was shunned in the other Chassidus. But in Chassidus, and of course today, everyone admits that this is accepted today. Everyone in every Chassidus, they learn Chassidus and they learn their svarim in a way they're trying to understand in Shinran Mavur and everything, and Oiz V'Hadar and everything. Everything is trying to use to make Chassidus understandable. But this is basically what the Alter Rebbe did originally, and the Mittler Rebbe made it into kind of a reality. And if you see. This is this Naktis. This is what this Misnagit was angry at, because it also says that the Mittler Rebbe, in order to learn Chassidus, you had to create more what they call the Chassidische Stiebel, correct? Until now, when you learn Chassidus, you could mingle with others. If you have a daven with other people, correct? How would you have a shir? How do you have a shir in Chassidus? It's not. So the honor in the Mittler Rebbe emphasized that everyone should make Chassidische Stiebel separately. That was like something. It was a consequence, of course, of the union of perpetuating the limit of Chassidus, making the Chassidus a reality. So this is what he says. So if you see that this Misnagid, which was actually, as we said before, a cousin of the Mittler Rebbe, a family of his. The things that he criticizes constantly is this whole phenomenon that they made a separate shtibel in Shklov and they made a separate shtibel in Vitebsk. This is what he was emphasizing. And when he basically, as you said before, the main case was, of course, that the Mittler Rebbe takes money from Hasidim, but the way how he describes the whole thing, that he describes terrible to the Russian government, how Hasidus is. How he made a shtibel there in Shklov, in the big shul, they made a separate shtibel here, a separate minyan, criticizing this whole phenomenon. And all this thing was a consequence of the Mittler Rebbe, that the Mittler Rebbe made the meaning of Limud HaChassidus as a given, as a reality. And this was, and as we said before, whenever such that's a Gila Lakus. The Gila Lakus, as we said before, every shlav, every phase of, when the Zohar came down, correct, and he became a sefer, there was tremendous snagdus against that. As long as Pnimis remains like there, very far, very distant, it's good. But when it comes and it becomes a reality in life, this is when the antagonistic forces are rising up, correct? As you said before. So likewise also, every Slav and every phase in Gila Lakus, in that sense, there's always snagdus, there's always tremendous. And again, I don't know if this could, I don't remember this says there's a kitruk and the Mittler Rebbe per se, like it says in the Alter Rebbe, but in kitruk, what does a kitruk mean? I don't know what it is, kitruk, in the heaven. Kitruk means when, of course, the sitrach, the klippers, the koiches that don't want Gila Lakus are fighting back. That's basically what it is. And this is really what the kuda of the as I said, kol avidos hasha'avad boy, combined together over here, you have the Chag HaGeula, that the Geula basically of the Mittler Rebbe was a Tzochin, and the Gila Chassidus and the Gila Lakus, that Yid basically can learn Chassidus. That's what basically the Gila says, correct? The obstacle that the Hel and the Hester against this whole thing that he wanted to be a Meiler and Master as he can learn Chassidus, he can learn Chassidus, and that's really what the whole Geulas Yud Kiselv is, in that sense, that I can learn Chassidus. Chassidus has to be learned. And Rebbe should help from Taka, as we should have a shaykh's hand to the Balagula, and it's like, in this case, it's doable, correct? If you ever have a shaykh to a tzaddik that is, okay, you have to have a shaykh to a neshama that is, how would you have a connection to some tzaddik? But if you have to, the way how to have to the Mittler Rebbe, it's very simple. The whole idea is I'm a learn Chassidus, and the idea of learning Chassidus is, first of all, you connect himself to the tzaddik, but you also connect yourself to Gilu Pnimis HaTorah. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Hey, Mosai, Osima, Legeje Yavon, Hey, Mosai, Osima, Legeje Yavon, Hey, Mosai, 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 Osima, Legeje Yavon, Hey, Mosai, 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 Used to be this knowing, like talking about the Mittler Rebbe made learning Chassidus, correct? What was the meaning of a Chassid Chabad? So steht in the Sichas from the Rebbeim, from the Rebbes of Chabad, they say, there's a phenomenon, a Chassid from the Nusach. He davens Nusach Chabad. Goes to the battle. Nusachari. Nusachari Shul, correct? It used to be a Chasida Nusach. The Friediger Rebbe writes for Chasida Nusach. And the Chassid Chabad it's understood, correct? Not unfortunately, not always is practiced. That's the reason why the Rebbeim had to write about it. But it was understood that a Chassid Chabad, versus other places, he doesn't learn Chassidus, then he's not a Chassid. I mean, it's like the Aleph base. It's like a person like a Frum Yid doesn't have a Shir Kriyas in Torah, correct? So he's not a Yid. I mean, he's not a Yid. Of course he's a Yid. You're going to put on film for him. You know what I'm saying? He's not a Yid. Has to have a Shir Torah, correct? That's like a Nocha Pshuta. He has to have a Kriyas T'mur Torah. There's not a Yid. A Yid in the sense of practicing a Yiddishkeit, correct? So by Chassid Chabad, he was understood, and that's like basically miyusad on the Mittler Rebbe's Yisoid, that a chassid means that he's learning Chassidus. If he's not learning Chassidus, is hatchka shaychus. Of course, that goes two ways. That means fakert, if somebody's not officially a chassid, like a lot of people are here, doesn't belong to Chabad. So when he learns Chassidus, he's a chassid Chabad also. It goes on to the meaning of Chassid Chabad is not that he has goes with the satuk or with the dress code. That's not what it is. You could be dressed and you learn because the way how Chassidus was miyusad, Eichel the Mittler Rebbe. It says that it's a whole story, a very dramatic story by the Mittler Rebbe that there's an interesting kuntris from the Friediger Rebbe, which is called kuntris Chassidus. Limit Chassidus is called. I don't know if you ever saw it. Basically, the kuntris was born out of that. What happened was a Bacher came to a certain place, and he started talking Chassidus, and of course he said like concepts that are a regular guy not familiar with. I don't remember exactly now the concepts that he spoke about it, and somebody got angry. The Bacher speaks about Hecher and Yonim like this. So he wrote up a letter for the Friediger Rebbe about it, criticizing it. That's the response that the Friediger Rebbe wrote and the necessity of learning Chassidus. That's called Kuntres Limit Chassidus. In the introduction, there's a very interesting introduction over there. It describes over there, mentioned before, that the Chassid, the Kiselv Lepler, in Chabad terminology called Kushe Lepler. Kiselv, his name is Kushe Lepler. So basically, the description was that he himself was a very simple Chassid. Simple person. Actually, there's a whole story how he became a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. Usually the Alter Rebbe's chassidim were all like Bale Gedoyle Deya, as we know, taking a Baruch to Sheller, a Beisel Homler, they were geniuses on their own right, and so on and so forth. To be a Mekletzker, they were all the Gedoyle Deya. And this Kiselv, this whole story, how he became a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, that he once came in the middle of the night and he was knocking at the door, and he saw there's a light. He came to Liozna and he saw there was a light open over there, and he was knocking at the door in the middle of the night because it was the only light open, and the Alter Rebbe opened the door and he pushed himself in. No, he didn't open the door. He came in from the chimney. He popped himself in, and And the Alter Rebbe told him, where's the goy, meaning the helper, they should kick him out. So he said, my goy is stronger than your goy, means my nafsha b'hamis is stronger than, that's what he said. And he was known to be like a kind of a very, we say, a kind of more a chassid of his gut than a chassid of his saint. Right? But he pushed himself in the Alter Rebbe's circle, in the Alter Rebbe's world. But he was like, he said that he was barely passing through able to understand a chumash, a piece of pasuk chumash. That's his level of learning is. But he was like a kind of unusual chassid in the Alter Rebbe's circles, correct? Because the Alter Rebbe's world was made for chacham bin avadas. How could I have a person like this? But he pushed himself in, and he was known to be a very emotional guy. It says from time to time he was able to. He had like an aura type of suddenly. Some spirit entered to him. He was able to be. He was in the post office. He was able to dance. Suddenly, something gechapt. He was like a type of guy. So as it says in the Mittler Rebbe's times, the Mittler Rebbe established he was a learning chassidus, and he said there was suddenly the new young guys that inscarved to Chabad, and there was like a major revolution in learning Chassidus, and they were like people were learning, understanding Chassidus, they were discussing Chassidus. It was like a major reawakening, a whole renaissance that in the middle of Rebbe's time, and this Kiselv felt terribly left out from this whole scene, and he felt terrible about himself. And he says he came to the middle of Rebbe, and he says like he has to understand Chassidus. He feels himself left out to this whole scene. Suddenly there was like a new percolated this whole limit of Chassidus in such a manner. So he said he has to. So the little Rebbe told him, "Ein davar oim ifnei ratzon. Ein davar oim ifnei ratzon." He's because the story goes that he came and he locked himself up in an attic, and he was like forcing himself to understand Chassidus. It's a whole thing that he went through until it's niftuchu mayanis. Suddenly he was able to understand Chassidus, and it says that he was able to understand Chassidus eventually on a tremendous, profound level. And it seems from the stories that it's not a pshat that he Gemara, everything else he start understanding. It says there was not areas, it was still like learning Chumash like on a pashta level. And to the point, as we said before, that the Sefer Imre Bina was written for him. That's the Imre Bina is like, as we said, one of the most profound Svarim was written for himself. And basically, the story tells us, like basically the whole idea, the revolution that happened, that as you said before, that being a chassid, but the Mittler Rebbe meant, as you said, you have to learn Chassidus. That became like the foundation of Chassidus Chabad. That the meaning of a chassid, a meaning of shaykhs to Chassidus is learning. The same way as a person has to learn Torah, he has to learn Chassidus. That was the Yisod. If you learn Chassidus, shaykhs. You could be here, you could hang around. They don't kick you out, correct? But you're not there. It was like a Nachun shooter. And a matter of fact, later on, correct? Unfortunately, Chassidus went hot. It's a movement of a few hundred years, and there was periods that, as we said before, people were born. The original people came to Chassidus, and they were like inspired. Of course, they learned Chassidus, but then they have children. No, they were born into the movement. So many things you can say it's Kamal Yusa. They take the Chassidus like the Gebäude are having it originally. But unfortunately, the originality of Gebäude means also that you're I'm a Jew at heart. As many times, you don't put me the Jews. I'm Jewish. It's my identity, correct? I don't do anything, correct? So in Judaism, there's no such thing. So there's also Chassidus. Certain people, their identity, they're Chassidus. Like, I'm the real thing, correct? I have 10 generations Chabad. Like, who's the real thing, correct? So, of course, this happened already before us. And of course, the times of the Rabbi Rashab, who made the Shiva, he had a certain period after when he made the Tamim. Everyone knows that he made the revolution of the Tamim. But one of the things that he also after he made the yeshiva in the last few years of his life, he had a major campaign. Correct. This is like he made he made it to not Bacharim, to Anash, and he wrote in these letters. And the reason why he wrote the letters, he appealed to them and says, the Chassidus that the Rebbeim wrote for whom did they write it? For whom did they made this whole Torah? For whom? He appealing to them, and very, very, and he made a major campaign, which then when Ad Kedei Kach, that after this he had like ups and downs in the campaign because the campaign started when he lived in Lubavitch, and then he was in Rostov. It was like a lot of ups and downs, and he wrote, and then Ad Kedei Kach that in Tzava that he wrote to his son was that Tzava that he should continue that besides the yeshiva they should continue this campaign that Nash learn Chassidus. And this is the idea. This all starts, as I said before. The main idea of learning Chassidus comes from the Mittler Rebbe. That's what the Mittler Rebbe basically established. This nekuda, this idea of learning Chassidus. Now again, before meaning learning Chassidus is, of course, that a person familiarizes himself. Without learning Chassidus, you don't know anything. You don't know about. I'm Jalent, Asidalakus, and you learn these whole topics. So of course, so there's all kinds of avoiders that you have to do. What I'm saying, the first and foremost thing is to learn. It can't be connected to Chabad, without learning Chassidus. Again, you can be, say such statements. Of course, you can be connected. Everyone is connected. Every Yid wants to. He could join. I'm saying, but from the point of view of saying, as if every Yid is a Yid, man. Say not. But really, as somebody knows a little bit about the tviyas of the Moira Chabad, what they demanded, ba'ofen achi takiv, is where's the Shir Chassidus? Where's the learning Chassidus? The Shmuel, we're talking to you now. Where's the learning Chassidus? Correct? That's what it is. And of course, learning once a week, but if Shabbos, specifically Shabbos, that was the main tviyah. But every day, or a few times a week. Without the learning Chassidus, without learning Chassidus, you have no shaykhs. And that nekuda, that is soy, that nekuda is what the whole geula was that we're talking about tonight. The whole malshinas was, everything was surrounded about this nekuda. The nekuda is that the snagdus against the Mittler Rebbe was this afotza of learning Chassidus in such a manner that it became like the standard living of everyone. That thing, that was the whole yisoid of the whole, as we said, the whole reason, as we said before, why you fought, and that was and of course, as we said before, kala, the famous lashon from the Ramban, kala karav yosef, charav yosef, correct? That it says when the Ramban went there to Israel and he saw like the Makam HaMikdash, he was destroyed and so on and so forth. He wrote the famous letters that Kala Karav Yosef, Karav Yosef. We're closer to. So maybe it's also Kala. What brings you closer to the Eivishter? There's over there more snaggedness to that thing, right? There's a lot of andere Sachen. But that thing you're not going to be able to. I'll inyanim. So Lamela, this is a person that have to have a Kabbalah over here. Everyone over here. That you have to have a Shia Kviz in Chassidus, but not stam learning Chassidus Layotzis, not like learning Be'in and learning is not Baruch Hashem Terei enough Svarim, not only like the Mittler Rebbe made like 10 Svarim, the Shar is called the Sharim, Shara Tshuva, Shara this, but today we have like hundreds. And for every level, for every Madrega, for every type of person, we have a different Sefer. And that's basically the Yisod of learning Chassidus. The interesting thing that Rebbe once said, I heard that Rebbe said it like it was I don't know. So the Rebbe had it was an interesting sikha. The Rebbe spoke about, if I remember correctly, it's quite a long time already. So the Rebbe said about that the older Rebbeim have pictures from them. Only besides two, he said, the Alter Rebbe, the Tzedek. I think the Rebbe said that the picture, the Tmuna from the Mittler Rebbe is in the Svarim. Is in the Sefer, because that was like the mahus of the Mittler Rebbe. It's like the Sefer. It has a story of the interesting story of the Tzemach Tzedek. There was a very interesting relationship between the Tzemach Tzedek and the Mittler Rebbe. Even though the Tzemach Tzedek, of course, was the son-in-law of the Mittler Rebbe, he was the Einik of the Alter Rebbe, son of the Rebbe. But the Tzemach Tzedek in some ways held himself like as a Talmud. He was like a Talmud of the Alter Rebbe, really. Correct? And then the Mittler Rebbe was Rebbe. Ad kedei kach, there's an expression in Chabad that even though there was like tension, if you could call it that way, but daber echad ladar doesn't mean that the Rebbe, like he was Mittler Rebbe. There's a lot of stories about this. Now, one of the very, very, very interesting because he was the Rebbe and he was the son-in-law. So there's one of the things where the Mittler Rebbe, the tension was, one of the reasons is that we spoke about it already once over here, that the Mittler Rebbe, when he gave over when he explained the ideas of the Alter Rebbe, he took the Alter Rebbe's ideas and he broadened these ideas, expanded them. And when he expanded them, he wasn't careful just to repeat Alter Rebbe's words or to preserve the Alter Rebbe's words. He just said it in his own words and he said it in his own ideas. And the Tzemach Tzedek held that no, you have to preserve the words of the Alter Rebbe. If you want to have explanations, you could additionally explain. Which if you notice, that's the difference. If somebody wants to Adei Mazeh, you can see the difference. If you open up the Mittler Rebbe Svarim, so you don't see the difference, it's, even though it's based on the Alter Rebbe's Torah, it's based on his Torah, all of them. Nevertheless, you can't find like words of the Alter Rebbe there. He just has his own words. It's based on the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, all Mamar of the Mittler Rebbe. That's actually the difference between, if you want to know, there's even between, the Mittler Rebbe had a machlokes with the Starscheller. The Starscheller was a Talmud of the Alter Rebbe. So the Talmud of the Alter Rebbe didn't say Chassidus based on the Alter Rebbe's Torah. He said his own Torah, based on the ideas. But the Mittler Rebbe said, every Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe, you can see what the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe is. And however, you can't see the words there. And the Tzemach Tzedek was of the opinion that you have to preserve the words. So this was like a... So once when happened this Meiser, this imprisonment, the Alter Rebbe says, the Mittler Rebbe says, why does it happen to me? What do? So the Tzemach Tzedek answered him, it's a punishment, that's what the Mittler Rebbe said, because you're not repeating the Alter Rebbe's words as is. He told him these words. And who? The Mittler Rebbe was Eiger of Amorim. The Mittler Rebbe was Amorim. That when he said this Amorim, so he told him, the Tzemach Tzedek told him this is the reason for the Meiser, for the arrest. So it says that day, I don't know if it's Shabbos night, I don't know when it was. The Mittler Rebbe didn't say Chassidus that day. He didn't say Amorim. And the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Tzemach Tzedek had his oldest son. His name was the Maril, the Buda Leib of Kapust. His name, the Kapuster. Eventually became the Kapuster Rebbe after Tzemach Tzedek passed away. But interesting story with him also. He's the oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek, and he really was a big chassid. Who?
Not the oldest.
Not the oldest. Second to the oldest. The oldest was the Rabash. He didn't become Rebbe. He was the second. So he, what's the name? The Samaril was a chassid of his Zayda. Wasn't a chassid so much of his father. After when his father became Rebbe, he didn't hold himself the same way as the Mittler Rebbe wasn't a chassid of the Shver so much. He wasn't a chassid of his father. And the story, when did he become a chassid? It says that when this whole story that the Tzemach Tzedek had to fight, the Russian government wanted to implement all kinds of different changes in Jewish studies, and Tzemach Tzedek had to go to Russia, to Petersburg, to Petersburg, and to take care of the Gezeiros, and the Maril went with him. And then when he saw the Mesiras Nefesh that the Tzemach Tzedek had, so he became a chassid of his father. And it said to the Lashon, Kenisili Ish, that he was kind of him as a chassid, this Maril. Until then, he was a big chassid of his grandfather, who's the Mittler Rebbe. That when ever the Mittler Rebbe said Chassidus, this Maril used to be, they used to call him the Stender, because he was like the Stender of the Mittler Rebbe. That's how it was. That's a chassid of the Mittler Rebbe. So whatever. So as I said before, the Mittler Rebbe didn't say Chassidus. The Mittler Rebbe, because he heard the statement of the Tzemach Tzedek. So he says, the story goes that then he went to his father, to Tzemach Tzedek, and says, what do you the Rebbe said? Was Chassidus today? He says no, he didn't say Chassidus. So then he went back to the Mittler Rebbe, so he didn't know what happened. He didn't know exactly what happened. So then the Mittler Rebbe asked the Tzemach Tzedek, this Maril, what are you learning? So he said he's learning Imre Bina. So after the Mittler Rebbe heard that Imre Bina, it's like Nocha Daite. That's the story, and he started saying Chassidus again. And it says that the Maril didn't know exactly what happened over here, he didn't know why he said, didn't know this whole thing what happened. So this is what happened. Meaning to say that, of course, the attack was that the Mittler Rebbe says this, what the Tzemach Tzedek said, and basically the Mittler Rebbe saw him learn Chassidus, that is Imre Bina. So the fact that he learns Imre Bina, that was like, okay, I accomplished what I need to accomplish. In other words, he justified the whole avoid of the Mittler Rebbe, as you said before, as Mezalem Chassidus. He said that even the Mittler Rebbe doesn't say Chassidus, but Melev the Sefer Imre Bina, as you said before, the whole accomplishment of the Mittler Rebbe was the Svarim, was Sifrei Chassidus, to make Chassidus into a limit. So when he heard the Maril basically saying afterwards that he was Lente, so he said that he learns the Imrabina, so that's noch a dite of the Mittler Rebbe, and he decided that this is not probably why the Gezeira is, whatever, I mean to say, even, or maybe it is, but that, we geht weiter, we can continue Meifat Chassidus. And this is the whole avoid of the Mittler Rebbe, this is the whole, Kol Avodas HaSha'avid Boi, but that's the Stalkes, as you said before, that the Stalkes was doimit to the Stalkes Rashbi, even the Tzemach Tzedek said, that the Stalkes is doimit to the Inim for Rashbi. And going back to the thing, as you said before, the whole Yisoid of the Mittler Rebbe's of the Mittler Rebbe's chinuch, and which became basically the chinuch. Many things, the Mittler Rebbe, when it was up formed and shaped Chabad, you know, in ways that are. There's even a story of the like for example, that there's a different avoida in many things between the Mittler Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, when he used to daven bislavus, daven with passion, and he used to shake like even. Violently, you know, to the point that we had to when the Alter Rebbe was around this place where he davened, they had to put like padding that he shouldn't hurt himself. That's like that's what happened. Okay? And the Mittler Rebbe davened silently. He davened like without movement whatsoever. So somebody once came to, I don't know if it's so true, but there's a guy, not a Lubavitcher guy. That's what he claims. He went to the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe, "How come in Chabad nobody shakes today? Nobody davens like with you know. So the Alter Rebbe told me, Chabad Chassidus is like the Mittler Rebbe. It's like the Mittler Rebbe shaped it. This is how, that's a fact. Correct? Since the Mittler Rebbe, so the thing in Chabad that somebody should do that type of thing. That was the shape and the form of that sense also. But in basically what, because the Mittler Rebbe was like called the Choisem. He was, the Alter Rebbe's world is fluid. Basically, it's all machlokes, if you know. I'm not going into this whole thing. Discussed already in the past. The Alter Rebbe had, the Mittler Rebbe wrote the Sefer Kuntres Spilus, which theory writes like that you shouldn't have like just a kind of passion that is not rooted in a sense of a lakus. That's called Kuntres Spilus. And therefore the fervor and the passion that a person has to be mamish, very well thought out, that it's rooted in the lakus. The Alter Rebbe had a dispute with the Shtorseller, because the Alter, that's why he took from the Alter Rebbe like in such a manner, and that shaped and that form, that became the foundation of what we call Chabad. That's the foundation of Chabad. But this is another area, another issue. But here we're talking about the union of limud of Chassidus. This is also shaped and formed by this whole idea that we learn Chassidus. You have to learn Chassidus. It's a choiv gomer to learn Chassidus. It's a chiyuv mamish. No, I think there's a lashon like about something. The Middle Rebbe says the same way as a choiv to put on tefillin, correct? The same. You are kakafte de lemanach tefillin. If you learn Chassidus, you are kakafte de lemanach tefillin apipnimius. You know, you're kakafte. So the same way as we do with kakaftes, we have to do also with the people kakafte de lemanach Chassidus. L'chaim.
That's the intro in the Rebina, in Nachun. That's what he says.
Yeah.
It's higher than actually.
we sing it a lot at Chabad. So this niggin, the shop said, this niggin, you can see, I don't know how exactly. Tmuna of the Chassidim from the Mittler Rebbe.
Oh, there you go. Usually it's called a certain
Whose story is the garlic pins are not Lakewood pins. Because I didn't stop in there.
details.
You put an extra picture on there.
Good story, though. Where did you saw the picture where I live?
Was? Wir sitzen dort und das darfst du verbrechen. Ah? Nee.
Was there a key for the particular hand that they want to make the hit some years? Like a key for see that?
Never heard about this story. Was?
Soll ich das Ding? So.
Je doet dat we hebben een schaap met stark af in de middelere hebben. Allemaal zo zicht in de hebben. In de eerste jaren. Ik meen in de mems, de eerste mems. Ik denk dat jaren, ik denk dat heb ik gezegd. Mensen, je Kiselv. Ik heb gezegd dat het als kan je Jiddisch, ja?
Ja.
Ik heb gezegd dat als de geheer van de Psachasta Lubavitch, die wij ook gedaan van de Friedrich Rebbe, als het de Rebbe Shabbat gezegd, dat het Daraja Albert Kidu, de Rebbe Shabbat Zamarim, Daraja Albert de Mamarim op de Mittlere Rebbe, dan nog etliche Sugis, dus het nog een Daraja Albert. Kidu als de Rebbe Shabbat Zamarim, dat allemaal Mamarim op de Marshall Imre Binnen, dat Jani Makashi met Imre Binnen, dat is Perikid Base, dat dat van de Chiluk tussen Chaim met Zura, met Atzmes, met Gilu Halen, Chilukim, de veel Chiluk, een schwere Sugya. Dan steht dat op zijn Sicha. De Friedrich Rebbe dacht ze met Friedrich Rebbe gewend in de eerste jaren, de Rashab in de eerste jaren, gewend het is niet gezond. Gleich met de Gleibe, gewend het gevallen kan Jalte, gewend in Jalte, dat is vooruit, maken we nog. Dan besteed dat net dat was, als ze gewend dat de Perikid Base. De Haar is eruit gefallen, weil gelernt Perikid Base in Imre Binnen. Dus steht dat. In de Schab. Dat je daar in de jaren dacht ze, jaren jaren, toch is mijn Wolf dacht ze, daar gedruckt dat geheint, op zijn Kiselv in de Indien van die huizen van Perikid Base in Imre Binnen. Gedruckt in mijn Wolf en op de jaren, mijn Wolf. Batsam die in een base, de tweede gedeelte van een base, is het gebouwd op de waarde minium van de Indianen. Dat is de hebben gezegd kilo als nog eens we waren in alle neuzen kilo van de mittlere hebben. Batsam kilo als we hebben de schaap en gemaakt die verkochten kilo de minium als Chassidus is Pneumius. Dus de ganze nicht so, dass Chassidus is Pneumius. Het komt alles met de mittlere Rebbe, met de ganze Stelle weg. En dan waren de alte Rebbe gebouwd die Pneumius, Chassidus Chabad. Aber es ist doch, ich werde das, ich werde am Achleukes pinklich wie abzuteitschen, was der Alter Rebbe gewähnt punktlich. Ja, sie gewähnt Straschelle von einer Seite, was sie gewähnt echt bei der Alter Rebbe, die Slavis, sie gewähnt eine ganze Kuch wegen dem Minion punktlich, wie zu nehmen, dem Maschmois von den Slavis. Wie viel getan die für die Slavis, wie viel nicht, sie gewähnt eine größe, sie gewähnt die Achleukes zwischen der Schelle und der Mittlere Rebbe, und die Kunst des Peiles sind die Beute auf dem. Das heißt, der Pschat ist, dass der Alte Rebbe gewinnt allein aber die Slavis. Die Rede Scheile ist, sie immer die Slavis, und viele halten es dabei 100%. Das ist gewinnt der Scheile. Wir kennen haben die Slavis, und viele ist 100%. Und der Mittlere Rebbe gehalten, als wir kennen es, das ist gewinnt, ich soll, das heißt, wird umgeteilt, Gufe für der Alte Rebbe, ist doch ein Lock in der Alte Rebbe bei ihm gesessen, ich bin Schlawim in des Patres von der Alte Rebbe.
Das ist nicht von der, das was er tut, nicht von der Teure, sondern
Nein, von der Teure, steht das nicht, in der Mamonim steht, was dort wie Kuach steht, dass kann Teure nicht echt gewusst, echt gehört von Alte Rebbe allein, und dann so, lekan, punklich, was ist Bescheid von der Maschmois, was ist Bescheid von der Sache. Mit anderen Werten, das ist sogar, also Bescheid Chassidus ist Primis, die Nekuda, doch bei Ätzem Zetten, der Alte Rebbe ist einmal allein, steht, ich sag mal, also viel in Tanja steht, also viele, wir kennen Tona sagen, es ist nicht dabei. Wie viel kann man Tona sagen, es ist halt nicht dabei, ja? Steht da viel in Tanja steht echt, dass eben zu äußern sein in die von der hier, steht da nicht, wie gut zu berichten, Schintei. Na, viele halt nicht dabei, aber wir kennen das schon mit der Gescheiche zu dem, es ist doch alle meine Erfahrungen, was wir kennen, Abteitschen bei euch im Gesetz. Laut darf ich als, wir haben so ein Primis, Bescheid, wir darf halten dabei, bei jeder Sache. Das ist doch, das ist geworden, ein Sod in der Hus von der Chosset Chabad, ja, das ist Primis, ja. Weil der Bescheid fliegt sich kochen in der, fliegt sich wegstellen. Was? Steller, nein, Steller doch das die ganze Zeit ein. Ich kennt das, ich kenne das Spivers. Was? Ich weiß, dass Steller Chassidim, ja, was haben getan bei euch gesagt, das ist Schimmelblum, dass Steller Chassidim meint. Ich stehe da, weißt du, da treffen. Stammen dort, das ist doch, dass heim Menschen, wo sind halb so Steller Chassidim. Was? Oh, wer? Der Steller Sohn geworden. Der Steller ist weg, selber wie auf der Mittlere Rebbe. Das war Shimon Atzeres. Mein Sohn geworden Rebbe gestern, das war Befall. Nicht geworden, dasselbe halbe Jahr später. Am meisten damit ist in Nellem geworden, Starschelle. Sachel von Starschelle gesehen, dann kommen sie zu Zedek. Nachher sind gegangen, sie haben Lednik, sie gegangen, Lednik. Weißt du, was er scheich ist, dann sagt man, also Spiders kennen, Spiders kennen wir dann. Der eine Kopf von der Stelle, die beschrieben der Teures mit der Belednik, der ganze Pasch mit der interessante Person. Die Kiselv ist Oysterstelle, das ist eine ganz chassidische Stelle sind die gegangen. So basically was der Stelle sagt, auf dem sie gewähnen auf die Stelle, aber es ist sicher, dass der Mittlere Rebbe Trick mechanisch gewinnt, ich habe Ihnen von Avoide bei euch im Knie. Das ist der Pschat, der Schreiber schafft mit Mafel sein, die ganze Zeit, kochen die ganze Zeit mit Linien. Der Nigen, hat gesagt, und dann sagt man den Parze von Knie von den Talmiden. Ja, der Nigen. Das ist klar, ja. Nicht der Kapelle. Ja, und der Gildu als der Mittlere Rebbe, ich habe der Mittlere Rebbe gewähnt, Anoichi, Moshe Rabbeinu, Beniebe, Beshem, Anoichi Oimed, Benechem, Beshem Alakechem, das ist der Mittlere Rebbe. Das ist eigentlich schön ist da. Starke schön ist, da kommt verstehen, Buchler, das ist meint, das ist auch ein Teilchen Buchler. Aber Gildu, der Rebbe Schabki, wenn man sagt, Gebäude, die ganze Sache, beäufen, der Mittlere Rebbe ist, sie auch jetzt reden, der Schalm, noch ein Mann, der Alben, der Mittlere Rebbe, beäufen gesagt. Der Mittlere Rebbe ist die nicht so Primis. Und der Rebbe schafft Gebäude, die Yeshiva, beäufen so Primis. Und der Pschat Kamuven, Pschat beäufen Primis, beäufen Primis, der Pschat ist, man darf lernen Chassidus, das ist der Choyle Rosh, der Pshat von Pnimius. Diese Pshat ist, dass wir sein bei öffentlicher Limut. Es kann nicht sein, kein Pnimius und kein Limut. Das ist ein anderer Wetter. Viel da Voide, es kann nicht sein, da Voide, es kann sein, da Voide ist nicht auf der Limut. Das ist nicht der Voide von Pnimius, das ist ein Voide. Aber die ganze Kunst des Peiles, die Gebäude von der Minion, es ist aber ein Chabad, es ist der Oivdom, wir sind größer Oivdom, schon auch der Chabad. Ja, da benutze ich es, kann mir noch Oivdom von der Plätze, ja. Ich hatte was Oivd auf die Chabad, der Inze ist ein Oivd, aber es geht nicht durch auf die Limit, wie ihr nach Chassidus, nicht auf dem kommt da weiter. Das ist ein Pshat, bei der Mittler haben sie auch gefragt, der sagt da weiter. Es ist nicht durchgegangen, der Sikuch, der Limut. Das ist ein Pshat, so hebt sich an von Limut. Sie können nicht gehen an dem Zinner, wie man sagt, von der Limut. Das ist ein Pshat, wenn er wegstellt, an die Jesuit von der Chassidus, gewähnt Gebäude, alle der Sache. Das ist ein Pshat, das ist Primus. Ich nehme es mein, es darf sein, durchgehalten, ausgehalten, es darf stimmen, es darf in einer gewissen Sinn, es ist eine schwere Avoide, es ist ein dackesdige Avoide, es ist ein dackesdige Öfen. In der meiste, das ist der mittlere Bescheid, das ist gewähnt, das ist eine Avoide, das ist mittlere Talmidem, es ist gewähnt, das ist eine Regel, das ist eine Halach, das ist ein Bescheid, das ist gerade friert, also viele hat Chassid von Kusche Leppler, ja, also viele beim Altner haben, man kann sein Apostel Chassid. Falls du bekommst geart, Kilo, weißt du, der Meister, die wird der Meister, der fliegt gerade erzählt. Kusche Leppler, wenn gewähnt hat, ist gewähnt Kilo Apostel Chassid, das ist der Apostel Chassid. Kusche Leppler wird zugepasst in Breslau, ich weiß, ich meine, Breslau, Kali, ja, was ist Kali? Tanz, man singt, ich meine nicht, ich meine nicht mehr alles sagen, der wollte so gewesen, sie haben ganz größer der Heben, sie haben ganz größer, es ist ein Schatz, es ist eine größere Avoide. Und der Avoide, ich sehe den Kadmoinen, man fühlt alle, das ist sehr gewesen, es wäre Spilus, wir haben das Spilus in der Kie, ist es schon so. Das ist ein Betreuer, wenn da versteht, der Dach ist ja in ihm, ich meine, kann sagen, als öfter Hein soll öfter sein, Abi soll etwas tun, ja, man kann sagen, der Maler reichen. Aber muss ich, wenn der Maler, Abi, das ist die ganze Behaltung ist da weggestellt, dass sie sagen, bei euch, Shalim und der Chassidus, Shalom und der Chassidus, es kann man doch allemal sagen, die tut etwas. Aber das ist allemal da, der Mahalach von, wie man sagt, mit die Evet. Ich meine, aber die Evet ist allemal da in Jüdischkeit, ja. Es ist allemal mit der Chille, und allemal kann man sagen, als no? Fromme Ida, feine Ida, der Abend, Bariches, kann auch noch mit den Sachen, ja. No, was der Mittler haben gekommen, ich kann sagen in einem gewissen Sinn, als etwas von oben Dackes die Indien, ja, sie machen Spiders Wolken gesetzt und was alles sagt. Es ist auch schon okay. Das ist der Vier da, jeder darf sein in der Dackes die Madrege. Was du mal schmeißt von dem? Na, du schmeißt von dem es ist nicht keine Scheile von Dackes. Eine Scheile was das ist der ganze Nekuda. Na gewiss, einerseits eine Scheile von Dackes. Kunst des Speiles. So sagen, geht rein, der Dackes an Nefisch, sie macht der Helgisch Luki, sie macht kein Helgisch Luki. Aber viele, das ist da ein Meister, so der Gisliad, das ist ein Meister. Weißt du, sie gedruckt dafür, das ist jetzt getroffen am Kiselv. Aber ich meine, als der Mord interessante Meister steht in der Sefer, das heißt von Chagis, das ist der Moshe Chagis. Das ist Mishnas Chacham, dachte ich mir. Interessante Sefer. Es hat interessante Sachen gerade, es steht Sachen, was auch viele gewähren ein bisschen Fachsid, das war der Bolschemter ein bisschen. Ich weiß doch, was ich meinte, das ist Mishnas Chacham, denke ich, Mishnas Chacham, dachte ich mir, das ist was mir heim, geht's da gerade dort Tante Meister. Es sind so ein paar Sachen, wo seine Magdum ein bisschen wie man guckt die Innen auf Bolschemtov. Hier du ist die Mielen von Bolschemtov, als Post ist reingekommen und gemacht Kukariku und der ist schön gewesen alle Elmes. Es da dat na Meise, so bringt Shem Sefer Chassidim, a sort Meise. Also gewinn ob Yid ist gekommen, steht dat Shem Sefer, weißt du, Sefer Chassidim, weißt du, wann sie kommt, das Meise dort. Der einzigste Platz getroffen, als Meise, was so pre-chassidische Meise, it's a pre-chassidic story. In Böll eine andere Meise, so was ist der Meise, ganz mehr bewusst, als da Yid, was sie gewinn, in Zeiten von der Riesal, was vielleicht bringen, Steh Lechem. Vielleicht bringen Steh Lechem nach Kodesh und eben gewinnt der Rav hat gehört, was getan hat, bringt Kodesh mit Manaseh, wo sie offen, Kitzel der Riesel sagt, dass Geusige Misa Latzmoi. Das ist man gewinnt, in jenem der Beide, der was betzem das Sachen haben sich gesehen schon meise von Dr. Bolshevsky sagt meise ja sag ich im Primus gekommen in Sidapsa absa meise was der alter haben geschickt von der mittlerer Rebbe der meise kilo als ich gewen bis Lubavitch gewen bis Lubavitch ja ich gewen bis Said sagt privat Seder in getin kommen meine Sachen der mittlerer Rebbe hat der Weg gemacht bis da der ganze Avoide und der alter Rebbe hat ihm geschickt der meise von dem Sefer kilo I mean, so da erg zu der Sort Avoide euch. Das sagt mir mal steht in der Meise. Ich meine, dass der mittlere Rebbe bringt der Meise jetzt euch. Der Meise ist der alte Rebbe. Das ist geschickt. Das heißt, okay, da verstehen ich, was heißt, das kommt von Apostoid. Das ist mit mir, von Apostoid, ist bei eine andere Sache, was wir reden. Ja, da redt man nicht von Apostel, da redt von einer Mittelissertiv. Das ist kaputt, das ist Dorfschmittelgeht. Da gilt es nach Apostel nach Afrika. Das ist wie der Tommy, man weiß gar nicht, ja. Also wie Janid, was vielleicht sagen, der Sidde, der ganze Sidde. Janid, das hat andere Sort Mahalach, das hat der Bolshevsky. Aber nur mit der Jid, was ist Leute Teure, ist ein gewöhnlicher Jid. Ja, wenn man redt, Kilo, will sein Heuwe der Shem. Wahrscheinlich ist der Jid, was will sein der Hashem, kann euch arbeiten auf der Slaven, das kommen in Sachen. Mit dem handelt sich der Dakis über Dakis. Aber heute ist der initial Dakis, was eine Gehe zu praten in der Minion zu Dakis, ja. Und bei Ätzem, der Teine da, was ist der einige Teine? Der einige Teine ist also so. That's it. Det var egen apparat, det står mal. Så det sant med förberätta sig knappt sant det schau. Schau mir sagt, als emitzer versteht das mit das schimmisch emitzer geholm dat nas de gehenem. Man sagt das Freu was in gehenem. Schau mir gegeben. Steht das mit Julen wie mit dat nicht so abgeworden die gehenem dat nicht das ist scharfe Sachen. Steht was fleck was in gehenem. Also weil sie fleck sagen, wenn sie fleck fasten, fleck zu sagen für jeden nein, was sie fast. Und das zum Beispiel noch alles steht da. Alles steht fast gar gehenem. Da gebracht sich genau was in das kleines steht am Tonne sagen am fast. Gebäude der schauen. Allah schon genau. Die Kids sagen, wer hat sich mal gekriegt verloren? Was ist der Bescheid? Ich habe nicht verstanden, Bescheid. Also Inze sagt, dass fast geht in Gehennen. Man will noch da rein. Hat keine Karten, Gehennen kriegt man Fall. Weißt du, das ist leider. Wenn hat keine Karten, haben Menschen gesagt, das muss man marien, dass fast. Okay. Der Bescheid ist so. Wenn sie tut, avoid das Hashem, tut es mit Afton, geht auf der Derech Haslula, auf der Derech Hamel. Also wenn sie tut avoid, und tut es nicht, damit es avoid, damit ist der Pshat, ist over das Atzme. Was tust du? Was tust du? Das ist gemeint so. In der Welt von avoid, ob sie nicht beizem, aber wirklich Shem Shemaim, das ist immer so teure Schmal, da muss ein schmaler Schlepp, ja. Ist tut mich, da war immer mit Chiyavim, mit Mikradin, okay, ist da muss ich Schlepp schmeichen, ja. Tut etwas Lefnimisches, den Schlepp schmal, was tust Die ganze Sache, ich habe alles fragt. Das ist Slavisch, was ist Slavisch? Das ist nicht Slavisch, das ist der eigene Biesches, der eigene Metzies. Sie bekommen gar nicht, sie nicht, dass sie ja etwas, sie nicht, dass sie so schwarz,